Hello and welcome to UK Property Accountants. My name is Chirag Majithia, an analyst in the marketing department here at UKPA. Today we're taking a look at capital gains tax and the reliefs associated with it. To discuss on this, we are joined by Ashmita Parajuli, a chartered accountant with the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants and a member of the client services team here at UKPA as the Senior Associate. Welcome to the show, Ashmita.
Thank you, Chirag.
Ashmita, could you please tell us a bit about what capital gains tax is?
So the capital gains tax is tax on the profit that you realize on the sale of UK asset. And here the tax is not payable on the sell value of the asset, but on the profit that you realize on the sale.
Who is required to make a capital gains tax return?
So the individual who are disposing of UK residential property needs to report it to HMRC through the filing of the capital gains tax return within 60 days of the disposal.
Ashmita, how does one calculate the capital gains tax on the sale of a property?
So the calculation for the capital gains tax is quite simple. So here you have the selling price of the property. From there you deduct the purchase price of the property and any other legal and professional fees associated with the purchase and sale of the property. With that, you also have the deduction of a capital refurbishment that you have done in the property during the ownership. So after these deductions of the relevant expenditure, you arrive to a figure which is a gain from the property. And in the gain, the capital gains tax is calculated.
And are there any deadlines for the reporting and paying of capital gains tax?
Yes, so there are two separate deadlines for the disposal of the reporting deadline for the disposal of a residential property is 60 days after the completion of sale. And for other asset, the reporting deadline is through a self-assessment tax return by 31st of January in the tax year in which the gain was made.
Are there any reliefs available to reduce the capital gains tax liability?
Yes, there are several relief that is available on capital gains tax. And one would be private residence relief and another would be letting relief.
Okay, you mentioned two reliefs. Let's start with what private residence relief is. Could you please explain that to us?
So the private residence relief is the relief that is applicable on the disposal of your main residence. Here, the gain that you have realized as a difference between the purchase price and the selling price of the asset is covered by the private residence relief, and while you file your capital gains tax return, no capital gains tax is payable.
Okay, and what about letting relief? What is that?
So the letting relief is the relief that is applicable in your main residence again, and the main residence it is applicable when the main residence is partly let out.
Okay. When dealing with private residence relief, there have been moments where I've come across something called the rent-a-room scheme. Could you please explain that to us as well?
So the rent-a-room scheme is a scheme that is applicable under income tax. So here, the property owner or the main residence owner can let out their room in their main residence and generate a rental income up to £7,500 in a year and pay no income tax in it. And the relationship between a rent-a-room scheme and the private residence relief is that if the property, if your main residence is eligible for the rent-a-room scheme, and when you dispose of this asset in the future, then the whole of the gain that is generated in the value appreciation of the asset would be covered by the private residence relief, even though the property was partly rented out.
So tell me, Ashmita, do UK residents need to report their gains from disposal of assets located outside the UK?
Yes, for the UK resident, whenever they dispose of the asset outside of the UK, has to be reported to HMRC. And here, the reporting is done through the filing of self-assessment tax return on the relevant year in which the disposal is made.
Okay, and what about non-UK residents? Do they need to report their gains from disposal of assets located outside the UK?
For non-UK resident, they have to report the disposal of UK asset to HMRC, but for the disposal of asset outside of the UK is not relevant for the disclosure here in the UK.
So far, we've talked about reliefs for UK residents. Are there any reliefs for non-UK residents for the disposal of their UK property?
So for non-UK resident, the relief are similar and they may be eligible for the private residence relief and the letting relief. So the private residence relief would be applicable if the asset has been their main residence, and the letting relief is applicable if they had partly let the property out in the past.
Okay. So those are the reliefs. Are there any allowances available to reduce the capital gains tax liability?
So whenever you file the capital gains tax return, there is this annual allowance that is applicable for the deduction of the capital gains tax. And for the tax year 24-25, the annual allowance is £3,000.
Ashmita, let's say I'm a UK citizen with a few properties located in countries outside of the UK, and I've already paid taxes there. Do I need to report on the gains from disposal of my assets located outside?
So for the UK resident, you have a reporting deadline or a reporting requirement to HMRC on disposal of any asset outside of the UK as well. So here, whatever the tax that you have paid on the gain of the asset anywhere outside of the UK has to be reported to HMRC through the filing of the self-assessment tax return. And the taxes deducted at source or the country where the asset belongs is subject to deduction if these two countries have a double taxation agreement in place, which means that you do not have to pay tax twice on the same gain that you have reported outside of the UK.
Is professional advice really necessary for the reporting of capital gains tax?
Yes, I would recommend a professional advice and help in the calculation, especially when it involves multiple jurisdictions and also complex calculation and the relief has to be calculated. Then having a professional help on the whole calculation would make it a lot more easier, and in some cases would save a lot more taxes because with this help you are actually confident of the relief that you have claimed, and the calculation would also be more correct.
Thank you so much, Ashmita, for joining us. You've been a great help as always. The reliefs applicable to capital gains tax depend on several conditions being in place for the given circumstances. If you feel you are eligible for any relief, do feel free to give us a call and book a free 15-minute discovery call. One of our experts will get to you and ascertain your situation and let you know of the services that you need. Thank you so much.